picked the green ribbon herself. Not the red one I'd suggested, not the gold one her grandmother sent in a separate box like a hint. The green one. She said it matched the pine needles outside our apartment window, and she wanted the package to look like it grew from the tree. My daughter is 6. Her name is Hazel, and she spent 3 afternoons in November taping that ribbon down, retaping it, smoothing the corners of the wrapping paper with the side of her thumb. The gift inside wasn't even hers to give yet. She just wanted it to be ready. It was a wooden art easel, the folding kind, with a little tray for brushes and a clip at the top for paper. Her grandfather, my dad, had ordered it from a shop in Vermont back in October. He told me on the phone, in that low, careful voice he uses when he doesn't want my mother to overhear, that he'd been saving for it since Hazel's birthday in July. She told him, very seriously, while they were eating popsicles on his back porch, that she wanted to be a painter when she grew up, not an artist. A painter. There was a difference, she explained. Painters get to wear smocks. He paid for the easel in 3 installments. He told me that too, like a confession. My father was a high school shop teacher for 31 years, and he doesn't carry that kind of money around loose. He'd hidden the box in the back of his workshop and asked me to wrap it because, in his words, his hands shake too much now to make a corner look nice. So Hazel wrapped it. She didn't know what was inside. I told her it was for her, from Grandpa, and that she could put the bow on. That was enough. She bossed me around the kitchen for an hour about ribbon placement, and I let her, because watching a child take a project that seriously is one of the small, unrepeatable things you don't get back. Christmas Eve. That was the plan. My parents host every year at the old house in Connecticut, the one I grew up in, the one with the radiator that knocks like a polite stranger, and the staircase that still has my brother's height marks penciled into the door frame. I was supposed to bring Hazel up Sunday afternoon, stay through Christmas morning, and drive back Wednesday. My husband, Mark, couldn't come. He's an EMT, and he pulled the holiday shift again. He kissed Hazel's forehead before we left and told her to save him a piece of pie. I want to be honest about something. I almost didn't go. Something in my gut had been tightening all week, ever since my brother called to say his new fiancée would be joining us, along with her daughter from her first marriage. Fine. Lovely. I am, in theory, a person who welcomes new family, but my brother is my mother's son in a way I have never been my mother's daughter. And I have learned, over 34 years, that when my mother gets excited about something, someone else in the family is usually about to pay for it. I went anyway, because Hazel had been counting down the days on a paper chain since November, and because my father had asked me, in that voice again, please come, please bring her. We got there at 4. The driveway was full of cars I didn't recognize. My brother's truck, my sister-in-law-to-be's white SUV, 2 others I figured belonged to my mother's church friends she'd invited over for the early appetizer hour. Hazel had the green ribbon package on her lap in the back seat the whole drive. She'd refused to let me put it in the trunk. She said it needed to see where it was going. My mother answered the door in a cream-colored sweater I'd never seen before. She looked at Hazel first, which I noticed, and her smile did this thing where the corners went up, but the eyes stayed flat. "Oh, sweetheart," she said. "Look at you. Come in. Come in. Grandma has so much to show you." She didn't hug me. She took Hazel's hand and walked her past the foyer toward the living room. And I stood there with the diaper bag and the casserole dish I'd brought, and I told myself, the way I always do, that I was being sensitive, that she was just excited about her granddaughter, that a hug was a small thing to ask for and I should stop asking. My brother came around the corner from the kitchen with a glass of wine. He looked good. He always looks good. He's 2 years younger than me, and he has the kind of face that gets him out of speeding tickets. "Hey, sis," he said, kind of distracted, eyes already scanning past me. "Glad you made it. Hey, before I forget, Tara's daughter is here. She's 7. Be cool. Okay? Be cool." I asked him what he meant. He didn't really answer. He said something about how Tara's daughter, whose name was Brielle, had been having a rough time with the divorce, and Christmas was big for her, and Mom had set up some stuff. He squeezed my shoulder and walked away with his wine before I could ask what some stuff meant. The casserole dish was heavy. I set it down on the bench by the door and went to find Hazel. She was in the living room. She was standing in front of the tree, holding her grandmother's hand, and looking up at a little name card on a stocking that wasn't there last year. The stocking was red velvet with white fur trim and gold embroidery, and it said Betrayal in big, looping letters. It was hung on the hook where Hazel's stocking had hung for the last 5 Christmases. Hazel's stocking was on the end, past my brother's, past the dog's, almost touching the wall. I want to be careful here. I want to tell this the way it actually happened, not the way my anger has rearranged it since. Hazel did not cry. She looked at the new stocking, and she looked at where hers used to be, and she said very quietly, "Mama, did Grandma run out of room?" I knelt down. I told her stockings could be moved around. I told her hers was still in the lineup, and that was what mattered. She nodded, because she is 6, and she trusts me, and she went to put her package under the tree. There were already a lot of presents under there. A lot. Most of them had tags I could read from across the room, and most of those tags said the same name in my mother's neat looping handwriting. I counted later when no one was looking. 17 presents for a 7-year-old child my mother had met 4 months ago. There were 3 for Hazel. 3. I want to say I confronted her right then. I didn't. I am not as brave as the women in the comments on stories like this one always say they would be. I went into the kitchen and I unloaded the casserole and I made small talk with my mother's friend from the choir about her hip replacement and I let the tight thing in my chest get tighter. My father was in his workshop. He almost always is during these things. I stuck my head in around 5:30. He was sanding a piece of oak that didn't need sanding. He looked up at me and he didn't smile. Exactly, but his eyes got soft. "She doing okay?" he asked. I said she was. I lied a little. He could tell. He asked where the easel was. I told him under the tree, green ribbon, 3rd row back. He nodded. He told me he'd come in soon. He told me to keep an eye on Hazel. That last part. Keep an eye on Hazel? I didn't think about it then. I thought he just meant the way grandparents always tell you to watch out for your kid around the staircase or the cocktail glasses on low tables. I went back inside. Dinner was at 6:30. My mother had set the dining room table with the good china, which she normally only uses for Easter, and there was a little folded place card at every seat with a name on it in her looping handwriting. Hazel's name was not at the dining room table. Hazel's name was at the kids' card table she'd set up in the sunroom alongside Brielle's. Which, fine, kids' table. Tradition. Except Brielle had the seat by the window with a special placemat and a juice box waiting for her, and Hazel had a paper plate. A paper plate. In a house with 12 more pieces of good china in a hutch, I'd helped my father load when they moved into this house in 1998. I sat down across from my brother. My sister-in-law to be, Tara, was on his right, and she was a very put-together woman with a long, shiny ponytail and a soft, careful voice, and she leaned over to me and said, "I'm so glad to finally meet you. Your brother talks about you all the time." I made my face do the thing faces do at dinner parties. Dinner went on. People ate. My mother poured wine. My father came in late and sat at the end of the table near the kitchen door, the seat he always takes, and he didn't say much. He never says much at these dinners. He listens. I've watched him my whole life listen at these dinners. The gifts started after pie. My mother announced it like a game show host. She clapped her hands twice. She said, "Brielle, honey, why don't you come pick the first one?" Brielle was a sweet kid. I want to say that clearly. She had nothing to do with any of this. She came over to the tree in her little red dress and she picked out a present and her eyes got huge when she saw it was for her and she opened it. Doll. Big one. The kind with the brushable hair. My mother beamed. Brielle picked another one. For her. Beamed. Another. For her. I watched Hazel's face. She was on the rug near the fireplace, holding her knees, and she was doing the thing 6-year-olds do when they are trying very hard to be patient and not look like they're waiting. She kept glancing at the tree. She kept glancing at the tree. She kept glancing at me. I smiled at her each time, the kind of smile that says soon, "Sweetheart, soon." After Brielle's 4th gift, my mother said, "Okay, Hazel, your turn, sweetie." Hazel got up. She walked to the tree. She picked the smallest one, which I thought was very polite of her. She brought it back to the rug. She opened it. It was a pair of socks, white socks, with little reindeer on them. The kind you buy in a 3-pack at the drugstore on the way over. Hazel said thank you. She said it the way I'd taught her, with her eyes up and her voice clear. And she put the socks back in the tissue paper, and she folded the tissue paper and she set the package down beside her like she was going to come back for it. My mother said, Brielle, honey, your turn again. I opened my mouth. I closed it. I opened it again. My brother was looking at his phone. This is the part I keep replaying. This is the part I keep replaying. This is the part I'd thought about every day for the last month. Brielle opened another gift. It was a watercolor set, a real one, in a wooden box with a little book of paper and a row of porcelain pans of color and 2 brushes wrapped in tissue, the kind of thing you'd see in a museum gift shop. I could see, even from across the room, the price tag had been left on the bottom of the box. $84. My mother said, I told Grandma you love to paint, sweetheart. She said you'd take such good care of these. Brielle hugged the box. Tara made a noise of delight. My brother glanced up from his phone and smiled. Hazel said, very quietly, I like to paint too. Nobody heard her, or nobody acted like they heard her. My mother was already pointing at the next gift and telling Brielle to go pick. I said, Mom. She looked at me. The flat-eyed smile. I said, Hazel likes to paint. Did you know that? My mother laughed, small. Oh, all kids like to paint, honey. Brielle's been taking classes. Hazel's been painting since she could hold a brush. Well, my mother's hand went up to her necklace. I'm sure she'll get plenty of chances. Brielle, sweetie, go on. Brielle hesitated. She looked at Hazel. She was 7, and she was a sweet kid, and she could feel that something was wrong even if she didn't have words for it. She said, maybe Hazel can pick? My mother said, it's not Hazel's turn yet, sweetheart. Go ahead. Brielle picked the green ribbon. She picked the green ribbon. She picked the green ribbon. I want you to understand what I did in that moment, which was nothing. I sat there. I sat there with my hands in my lap, and I watched my daughter watch another little girl pick up the package she had wrapped with her own thumbs over 3 afternoons in November. Hazel's mouth opened a little. She knew it was hers. She didn't say anything because she's 6, and she'd been told by her grandmother, who she loves, that it wasn't her turn yet, and she trusted that. Brielle unwrapped the green ribbon carefully. She was a careful kid. The paper came off in big pieces. It was the easel. The wooden easel from Vermont. Hazel's name was on the gift tag. I knew that. I had written it myself in red marker. From Grandpa to Hazel. But the gift tag was gone. There was a new gift tag. White cardstock. My mother's handwriting. For Brielle. From Grandma and Grandpa, with love. The room went very quiet for a second. The way rooms do when something has happened that nobody's quite sure how to name. Tara's mouth was open. My brother had finally looked up from his phone. Brielle was looking at the easel, and at the new tag, and at me. Because some part of her knew. My mother said, oh, what a beautiful surprise. Look, Brielle, it's an easel for your painting. Hazel started to cry. Quietly. The way she does, where her chin goes down and her shoulders shake, but she tries not to make any noise because she doesn't want anyone to feel bad. I stood up. I don't remember deciding to. I just was standing. I said, Mom, that's Hazel's. My mother said, smiling now, harder, don't make a scene, honey. There's so much under there. Hazel can pick something else. That's not the point. It's a gift. From us. We get to decide. Brielle needed something nice this year. Hazel wrapped that. My mother's face did something I will not forget. It got tight, and her smile got wider at the same time. She said, Hazel will understand. She's a good girl. She's not the kind to throw a fit over a toy. Throw a fit over a toy. Hazel was on the rug, crying into her sleeve. I looked at my brother. He looked away. He looked down at his phone. He scrolled. This is the part the comments always get wrong. People always say in stories like this that they would have grabbed their kid and walked out and slammed the door. I want to tell you what actually happens in your body when your mother does this to your child in front of 15 people. You go cold. You go cold and you go quiet, and you forget how doors work. I said, give it back. My mother laughed. She actually laughed. She said, don't be ridiculous, sweetheart. Sit down. I said it again. I said, that's hers. Give it back. Tara stood up. She was a kind person. I could see that now, and she was horrified. She said, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. She said, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I thought. My mother cut her off. Tara, sit down. This is family business. I said, she is family. Hazel is family. She is your granddaughter. My mother smiled the flat smile. She said, in the voice she used to use when I was 8 and I had asked for something twice, your daughter is being a brat about a present. We're not doing this tonight. That was when my father stood up. He stood up at the end of the table near the kitchen door, and he didn't slam anything, and he didn't raise his voice. He just stood up, and the room got quiet the way rooms get quiet for a kind of authority you didn't know was in them. He walked. He walked from his seat, past my brother, past my mother, around the tree. He bent down. He picked up the easel from the floor next to Brielle, gently, with both hands, the way you'd pick up a sleeping cat. He looked at Brielle, and he smiled, and he said, "Honey, this isn't yours. I'm sorry. This was a mistake. We're going to find you something better, okay?" Brielle nodded. She was a good kid. Her eyes were huge. Then he carried the easel across the room, and he set it down in front of Hazel. He got down on one knee. His knees are bad. I saw him wince. He took the new tag off and crumpled it in his hand. He pulled the original tag from his pocket, the red marker one I'd written, the one my mother had taken off and thrown away earlier somewhere, and he handed it to Hazel. He said, "I bought this for you in October. I picked it out myself." There was a man named Pete at the shop in Vermont who sanded the legs down twice because they weren't smooth enough for my granddaughter. "This is yours. It's been yours since October. I'm sorry it took so long to get to you." Hazel held the tag in both hands and looked at it. My father turned. He looked at my mother. He looked at her for a long time. I had never seen him look at her that way before in my life, not in 34 years of watching him look at her in every other way. You can look at a person you have been married to since 1985. He said, "Marlene, you will not do this to that child again. You will not do this in my house." My mother said, "Oh, please, you're embarrassing." He said, "You took a tag off a present and put your own name on it. You handed our granddaughter a pair of drugstore socks. You moved her stocking. I watched you do it. I came in from the workshop on Saturday and I watched you do it." He paused. He said, "I have watched you do this for 40 years. I watched you do it to her." And he pointed at me. "When she was 8 and her brother got a bicycle and she got a coloring book, and I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything because I was tired and because you wore me out and because I told myself it was just a coloring book. It wasn't just a coloring book. I owe my daughter an apology 40 years overdue, and I will not watch you do this to that one." He pointed at Hazel. He turned to my brother. My brother had finally put down his phone. He said, "Son, you sat there. You looked at your phone. You let your mother humiliate your sister and your niece in front of your fiancé and her child, and you sat there. I raised you better than that. I know I did, because I tried. Even when he gestured at my mother, told me not to. Stand up. Apologize to your sister. Apologize to your niece, or get out of my house." My brother turned red. His jaw moved. He looked at my mother. She wasn't looking back at him. She was looking at the floor. He stood up. He came around the table. He said, "Sis." "I'm sorry." I said, "Tell her." I pointed at Hazel. He went and he knelt down in front of Hazel, which is something I'd never seen him do, kneel in front of a child, and he said, "I'm sorry, kiddo. I'm really sorry. I should have said something. I should have stood up. I didn't, and I should have, and I'm sorry." Hazel looked at him. She looked at the easel. She looked at her grandfather. She said very quietly, "It's okay, Uncle." Grandpa fixed it. My father's mouth went tight. His eyes went wet. He didn't cry. My father has not cried in front of me since 1997, but his eyes went wet, and he reached out and he put his hand on Hazel's hair, and he kept it there. My mother left the room. She walked out into the hallway and up the stairs, and she did not come back down that night. We packed up the easel. Tara helped me. She kept apologizing. She had not, she said, known anything. She had thought all those presents were a generous welcome to a new grandchild. She had thought the easel was hers because her future mother-in-law had told her so. She had not seen the tag get switched. She kept saying, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I told her I knew. I told her it wasn't her fault. I told her I hoped when she married my brother she would be careful, and she would be Campbell, and she would be kind, and she would never, ever let what just happened again. She nodded. She had tears running down her face. I think she meant it. I hope she did. We drove back to our apartment that night, even though it was late and Hazel was asleep within 10 minutes of getting in the car. My father walked us out to the driveway. He helped me strap the easel into the back seat. He stood at the window and he put his hand on Hazel's cheek through the glass, and he said, "I love you, painter girl." She didn't wake up, but she smiled in her sleep. He looked at me. He said, "I'm sorry. I should have done this 30 years ago." I told him he did it tonight. I told him that was enough. I told him it had to be enough. He nodded. He hugged me. He smelled like sawdust and old spice, like he has my whole life. And I cried into his coat, the kind of crying you do when something has been held in for a long time. And he stood there in the cold driveway and let me. I haven't spoken to my mother since. She has called 4 times. She has not apologized. The first time she called, she asked me when Hazel was coming back to visit. The second time, she said she had bought Hazel a new present and wanted to send it. The third time, she said I was overreacting. The fourth time, she didn't say anything, and there was just breathing, and then a click. My brother and Tara got married in April. We didn't go. He understood. He's been trying. He calls twice a month. He took Hazel to the aquarium last weekend. He brings up the easel sometimes, in a careful voice. And he apologizes again, even though I've told him he doesn't have to. He tells me he should have stood up. He tells me he wishes he had been the one to do it instead of Dad. I tell him it's okay. I tell him he can stand up next time. Tara had a baby in October, a little girl. They named her after my father's mother, which I didn't expect, and which made me cry in the grocery store when I heard. Hazel is going to be a big cousin in the way that matters. We see them once a month. My mother does not. My father comes to our apartment now. He drives down on Saturdays. He brings sawdust on his shoes. He helps Hazel set up the easel by the window, and they paint together, and he tells her about the man named Pete in Vermont who sanded the legs down twice. He tells the story exactly the same way every time. Hazel knows every word of it by heart, and she says it along with him, and he laughs. The easel is in our living room. She paints almost every day. She is working, currently, on a portrait of our cat, which looks nothing like the cat, but which she has informed me is, quote, abstract. She wears a smock my father bought her. She is, she tells everyone who will listen, a painter. She keeps the original tag in a little wooden box on her windowsill. The red marker has faded a little. I asked her once if she wanted me to make her a new one. She said no. She said this one was the real one. She said this one was the real one. She said her grandpa wrote it. She didn't write it. I did. I didn't have the heart to correct her. Some things, once a grandfather hands them to you, they belong to him. They belong to you because of him. That's what a real gift is, I think. It's not what inside the paper. It's who fought for you to be the one to open it. I've thought a lot in the months since that Christmas Eve about how something as small as a paper gift tag can hold the whole weight of a family inside it. My mother didn't change Hazel's life by swapping that tag. She changed mine. She showed me, finally, in a way I couldn't talk myself out of anymore, that the silence I had grown up inside was a choice I was still making at 34 years old. And I had been about to pass it down to my daughter. Every cruelty in that room was the harvest of a seed planted years before. My mother had been allowed, for 40 years, to humiliate the people who loved her, and nobody had ever said the word stop. Not my father, not my brother, not me. She got used to the silence the way a person gets used to a long, warm coat in winter. She stopped knowing she was wearing it. And so, when she reached for that easel, when she peeled off my handwriting and replaced it with hers, she didn't think she was doing anything wrong. She was doing what she had always been allowed to do. That is what cause and effect looks like inside a family. You give cruelty room, and it grows to fit the room. You give silence 40 years, and silence learns to act like love. The only thing that breaks the pattern is one person who decides on one ordinary night that they will not pass it down again. My father broke the pattern. He was 71 years old and his knees hurt, and he had been tired for a very long time, and he still stood up. That took something I don't have a clean word for, not anger. Anger is easy. What he had was the harder thing, the willingness to look at his own 40 years of looking away and to say it out loud, in front of his wife, in front of his son, in front of a child who would remember it for the rest of her life. That is what I think real courage is. It is not the absence of regret. It is doing the right thing while carrying the regret of every time you didn't. I want Hazel to grow up knowing 3 things. I want her to know that being kind does not mean being quiet, and that someone who tells you otherwise is asking you to disappear. I want her to know that the world will test her judgment, and that the smartest thing she can do is to trust what her own eyes see, even when the adults in the room are telling her the room is fine. And I want her to know that strength is not loud. It is a man with a sore knee getting up from a chair and walking across a living room because something is wrong and he has decided, after a lifetime, that he is the one who will say so. She is 6. She believes her grandfather wrote her tag. Someday I will tell her the truth, that I wrote it, and that he carried it in his pocket all night, waiting for the right moment to give it back. I think she will understand. I think by then she will know that real gifts are the ones somebody fought for. And I hope when her own moment comes, she remembers how to stand up.